Welcome to this demo of the IBM Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management. Today, we will explore how to use placement rules and placement policies to move application components across clusters deployed to different cloud providers. We're currently using 3 clusters, 1 running on Google and 2 running on OpenShift on another cloud provider. I can use Multicloud Manager to break down information for those 3 clusters, like region, purpose, or type of technology running the Kubernetes cluster. I can also have a look at the information gathered from the different clusters, like pods, CPU, or memory consumption. The Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management gives me information around policies across all the different clusters managed by the Cloud Pak. Through the Governance and Risk dashboard, I can assess my compliance and security posture across different dimensions. In this case, I'm particularly interested in vulnerabilities, mutation and risks of my containers, and security of my certificates and their encryption. I can also break down these findings based on the standards that they belong to, for example, PCI compliance. In this case, all the pods deployed to my clusters are compliant with PCI standards. I can investigate the policies in more detail and see to what cluster they apply. Next, I'm going to have a look at the applications running across those clusters. In this particular case, I'm focusing on a guestbook application that is made up by 4 microservices. Those microservices happen to be running on my Google Kubernetes Engine cluster. I can observe the status of the pods and open up the topology definition of the application. The topology includes a set of placement rules that define where the application components get deployed. In this case, any cluster in the EU region which is deemed as PCI compliant. The Cloud Pak automatically generates a set of Grafana dashboards to monitor the application components on the cluster where they are deployed. Using Prometheus as the data collector, I can retrieve information across each pod running in the different clusters. In this case, all of them on the GKE cluster. Let's have a look at the clusters and their definition. For each of my 3 clusters, a set of labels have been defined that can be used by the placement rules to locate the different pods and components of the application based on placement policies. It is through those rules that the 4 deployable components of the guestbook application have been deployed to the GKE cluster. If we open the labels for the GKE cluster, we will see one that specifies that this cluster sits in a PCE compliant region, and one that determines the geography of that region as the EU. If the security posture of this cluster changes, and for a number of external reasons, it is not deemed as PCI compliant anymore, those labels can be changed either manually or automatically through a CI/CD process in order to reflect the change in posture. This would result in the PCI label to describe the cluster as non-compliant anymore. If that happens, the placement engine in the Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management will undeploy all components from a non-compliant cluster to prevent any possible regulation risk. No other PCI compliant cluster is present at this moment, therefore the application cannot be placed onto another cluster. However, if I select a different cluster, this time based on OpenShift, and change its labels to reflect the fact that that cluster sits on a cloud that is PCI compliant, The placement engine will automatically respawn the microservices application components on top of the cluster that is now compliant. The pods, part of this microservices application, will take a few seconds to come up, but I can already see them in the dashboard as being present in a non-ready state. After a few seconds, one of the pod is up and the other one is currently experiencing some problem in pulling the image. All of that information is reflected in the resources view in the application dashboard. As we mentioned earlier, dynamic monitoring is part of the Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management. As application components are moved from one cluster to another, the Grafana dashboards underpinned by the Prometheus data collectors get automatically regenerated to reflect the changes in the application location. I can therefore continuously monitor my application components as they're moved from one cluster to another based on placement policies that were influenced by a compliance rule. The Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management allows to define compliance as code and to influence placement rules for application components based on that compliance. Applications can be moved and scaled across clusters and continuously monitored without the need of manual intervention.